one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would mind, remain standing for a moment of silence and keep let's keep in our prayers all the unrest that's going on across this great land, and hope things will get better. Thank you very much. Time, as everyone knows, time will be allotted at the end of each meeting for the commissioners to receive comments from the public. We have a public notice this morning, Code Home Rule Bill number 7-2024, introduced by Ronald H. Fithian, President of the Board of County Commissioners for Kent County, Maryland. An act to amend Chapter 222, Zoning of the Code of Public Local Laws of Kent County, Maryland, also known as the Kent County Land Use Ordinance, to add self-storage centers as a permitted use in the industrial district by amending Article Roman numeral 5, District Regulations, Section 15, Industrial District 15-2, permitted principal uses and structures by adding a new number 20 as follows. Self-storage centers provided the front facade of the center and any other facade visible from adjoining public roads reflect the scale, materials, and design features common to residential or historic structures in the county. Self-storage centers are subject to site plan review by amending Article Roman numeral 5, District Regulations, Section 11, Commercial, Section 11.2, permitted principal uses, and any other facade visible from adjoining public roads reflect the scale, materials, and design features common to residential or historic structures in the county. Self-storage centers are subject to site plan review and by including a certain non-codified provision to instruct county staff to make similar changes in the upcoming readoption of the land use ordinance. The legislation was adopted on September the 17th, 2024, without amendments, and the provisions of this act shall take effect on September the 27th, 2024. This bill in its entirety is on file at the Commissioner's Office, 400 High Street, Chestertown, Maryland, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and on the county's website at www.kentcounty.com. By order of the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, Sandra M. Blackston, Clerk, published in the Kent County News on 9/26/24, 10/3/24, and 10/10/24. We have a list of consent items here. Regular session minutes dated September the 17th, 2024. We have our liquor minutes dated September the 17th, 2024. We have our closed session minutes dated September the 17th, 2024. Kent County Junior Wrestling Raffle only, October the 5th, 2024. Main Street Rock Hall Raffle only, October the 25th through the 26th, 2024. I have Jamie Williams, Director, Economic and Tourism Development, with the Main Street Rock Hall a letter of support, T-Mobile Hometown Grant. Number 7 is Scott Boone's the Director, Information Technology. Request to renew memorandums of understanding for the town of Galena, Town of Millington, Circuit Court for Kent County, Maryland, Register of Wills for Kent County, Maryland, Kent County Chamber of Commerce. And then Dan Matson of Public Works, his Water and Wastewater Division of Public Works Agreement. And Dan Matson, Director of Public Works for the Water and Wastewater Division, sewer allocation request for Green Lane Rock Hall. Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve all non-consent items as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Then we have 2 special Class C license First one is the Sultana Education Foundation is applying for a beer and wine license for October the 5th, 2024. And we have Sultana Education Foundation Beer and Wine dated application for November the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 2024. Because these applications are for alcoholic beverage, it's in need of a public hearing, and we will allow today to be that public hearing. So anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against either of these applications, feel free to do so at this time. There being no comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve two of the applications for the Sultana Education Foundation Beer and Wine, one for October 5th, 2024, the second for November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 2024.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have a couple proclamations. The first one is for Susan Pritchett, Chair of Constitution Week, Daughters of the American Revolution, Constitution Week 17th through the 23rd of September, 2024.
I don't see Miss Susan.
And Susan's not here, but nevertheless, we'll have someone read, Commissioner Nickerson will read that proclamation.
This is a Kent County, Maryland proclamation, Constitution Week, September 17th through the 23rd, 2024. Whereas September 17th, 2024 marks the 237th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation, and whereas it is fitting and proper to recognize the patriotic celebrations that will commemorate the occasion officially, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. And now, therefore, we, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd, 2024, as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to affirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787. Signed, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, Ronald H. Fithian, President, Albert H. Nickerson, Member, and John F. Price, Member.
And if Ms. Pritchett comes in later, we'll make sure she gets that.
I believe the Orphans Court is in session today, and she's an Orphans Court judge.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, the next we have with Mr. Scott Boone, Director of Information Technology. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, dated October the 1st through the 31st of 2024. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, how are you?
Good. We have a proclamation, but if, that I'll read, but
Sure.
you start us off.
Sure, so this is actually, I think, the 21st year that the federal government has recognized Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It was first declared under the Bush presidency, so it's been around for a while. A lot of people don't realize that cybersecurity has been an important issue for national defense and national security for that long. But a couple bullets, what cybersecurity really does for us, it's protecting sensitive data, obviously, maintaining the public trust, certainly with government services, and financial services, so forth. Operational continuity, right? We can't continue to operate our businesses or our government without technology anymore. Compliance and legal requirements, economic stability, national security, awareness and education, and collaboration and sharing best practices among the private and public sectors. So that's why we urge you to proclaim October Cybersecurity Awareness Month for Kent County.
Very good. I'll take the pleasure of reading the proclamation. It's Kent County, Maryland proclamation entitled Cybersecurity Awareness Month, October 2024. Whereas October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, emphasizing the importance of protecting digital information and infrastructure. And whereas the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland acknowledge the growing threat of cyber attacks and the need for enhanced vigilance and proactive measures to safeguard sensitive data and systems from potential breaches. And whereas it is essential for all residents, businesses, and government entities within Kent County to be informed about cybersecurity best practices, including the use of strong passwords, recognizing phishing attempts, and regularly updating software to defend against malicious threats. And whereas the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland urge all residents and businesses to enhance their cybersecurity measures at home, in the workplace, and within schools. This can be achieved through public awareness campaigns, educational programs, and community engagement. By working together, we can empower our community to take essential steps towards safeguarding themselves and fostering a more secure digital environment for all. Now, therefore, we, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, do hereby proclaim October of 2024 as Cybersecurity Awareness Month and urge everyone to enhance their cybersecurity knowledge and practices. Signed, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, Ronald H. Fithian, President, Albert H. Nickerson, Member, John F. Price, Member, and dated September the 24th, 2024.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to have a picture taken with this?
Have you ever seen what I do to a picture?
We know better.
Yeah, exactly.
And now we have a special recognition. Mr. Pete Landon, you want to, Pete is the director, and Brian Pearsall is the emergency planner, Office of Emergency Services, and they're here to recognize a certificate of recognition for Tyler Arnold, our GIS specialist, planning, housing, and zoning. But
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. In the interest of adhering to my teammate, former Marine's words, I'll be concise and be gone. But Office of Emergency Services undertook a project to put maps up on our walls that we can use in the Emergency Operations Center. And Brian and Tyler Arnold from Planning and Zoning worked together to create a really useful set of tools that we just had finished. And they're 4-foot maps that can be written on and will be displayed during an emergency. And rather than go over a whole bunch of bullet points, I think the proclamation itself, it lets you know what Tyler's efforts did and how we use it and how much the Office of Emergency Services appreciates his efforts.
very good. Brian, you,
The boss said it perfectly.
very good. All right, well, Sheriff, Commissioner Price is going to read that certificate of appreciation.
Morning, Tyler.
Welcome.
We have a certificate of appreciation. This is to certify that Tyler Arnold, GIS specialist, is hereby recognized for his professionalism, diligence, attention to detail, and dedication in assisting the Office of Emergency Services by providing the necessary tools to allow emergency management in Kent County to more effectively prepare, respond, and recover from emergencies. Tyler created several highly detailed maps of Kent County consisting of the Kent County municipalities, vital information, including AED and fire call box placements throughout the county, as well as created incredibly accurate maps depicting flood-prone areas within the county, including possible storm surge probabilities for these vulnerable areas. Tyler's ability to visualize the geography not only of our municipalities but our county in its entirety certainly contributes to an effective response to disasters by the Office of Emergency Services. We, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, thank you for your efforts, continued devotion, and dedication to Kent County and the community. Signed, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, Ronald H. Fithian, President, Albert H. Nickerson, member, John F. Price, member, dated September 24th, 2024. Congratulations.
I want my picture.
Well, you're a lot better looking than Scott Baker.
Looks like you guys have done this before.
Our first appointment is Carl Anderton, Junior, Director of Rural Economic Strategy of Maryland Department of Commerce for introduction and outreach. Welcome, sir.
Yes, sir. How y'all doing this morning, all right?
Fine, thank you.
It's a very smooth meeting you run here, I gotta admit. I get
Well,
to
so
go-
far.
Yeah. I get to go to a lot of, county council meetings across the state now, and this one is, you run a pretty tight meeting.
It's subject to change, though, without notice.
Yeah, right, yeah. So I'll be brief. I noticed we got the congressman in the back of the room here, and so I don't want to take his time. I'm going to need his help after January. But my name's Carl Anderson. I'm blessed to have served in the legislature for the past 10 years. Before that, I was the mayor of Delmar down on the Lower Shore. I was a council member there, as president of Maryland Municipal League. That's where we got to know each other. And here recently, the governor asked if I'd want to serve on his team, being a voice between the administration and the rural parts of the state. You know, as a candidate, while he was running for office, we would speak and he'd ask about, why is it if, when he's in the rural parts of the state, they always talk about they feel like they're left behind. That's just because we feel like we're left behind. And so he said he wants to try to stop that. And so he wanted to have a direct conduit between county governments and municipal governments and his desk. And so when we work with counties and municipalities on strategic initiatives for economic growth, or if it's any type of issue, state highway, Department of Health, Department of Environment, that stuff goes straight to the governor's desk. It doesn't get lost along the way. He wants to know exactly what's going on in all corners of the state. And so after those conversations with him, when he made this offer, I eagerly accepted, because coming from the Eastern Shore, I know the value of trying to have that conduit. So we work really hard. We have 16 counties, and our goal is to be in each of the counties as close to monthly as humanly possible. The state's a little bigger than I thought. Garrett County isn't directly around the corner. We may say everything's around the corner living on the shore, but that's a very long corner. But we're going to be there. So the days of, in the past, as you well, more than versed, you'd have the administration come through and they'd take a couple pictures, walk through downtown Chestertown, and off they go. Those days are done. We're going to be here. We're going to be meeting with your administration, your chambers of commerce, economic development folks, and anybody else who wants to have a meeting. If there's two or more gathered, I'm going to be one of them. And so we're going to do our best to take advantage of this opportunity we have with the administration to address some concerns and see what good can come out of it.
Well, we look forward to the working relationship with you, and that's very good to know. So,
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be scheduling some time together to hang out. And, Bunky says hi, by the way. He's the county administrator down in Wycomico. And much more peaceful here than what we got going on in Wycomico. I'll give you that, absolutely. Much more peaceful. But you got to have some type of entertainment these days.
There you go.
So, but anyway, I just want to appreciate you allowing me a couple minutes to come by and say hi, and I look forward to working more closely with each and every one of you. And if there's no questions, I'm going to get out of the congressman's way.
Well,
So,
we thank you for coming, and we're glad to have your name and number now. We can
Yes.
reach out and
any type of issue
look
at all,
forward
don't
to it.
hesitate to reach out, any type of issue. we've fixed a couple things down in St. Mary's out in Western Maryland, and so we're figuring this thing out. So if you have any issues with any agencies or anything, please don't hesitate to ask. That's the whole point of this. So,
I'm assuming Shelley has your phone number to be able to give to us.
oh, she's been able to give me for about a decade now, so, yeah. Yeah.
And I assume you live on the Mar side.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, indeed, that's the better side, yeah.
It is.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. But I grew up in Chrisfield, my family's all from Somerset County, and, so we've been there since the 1600s on the Lower Shore. And, but it's really good to see, as I was riding up today, taking the back roads, I was like, man, this feels like, Cokesbury or Wongo down in Wycomico County with just a little bit more hill, but it's nice to know the shore is really the same from one end to the other. So,
Well, thank you very much.
No,
Rich.
absolutely.
We appreciate you coming in.
yes, sir.
Yep, thank you.
Yes, sir. I'll see y'all soon.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
take care.
Yep.
Next, we have Johnny Olszewski, and President, and Michael Sanderson, Executive Director, Maryland Association of Counties, with her annual update. Gentlemen, welcome to Kent County.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. President, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be with you. As
Nice
you
to be
mentioned,
with you.
Johnny Olszewski, Baltimore County Executive, proud President of the Maryland Association of Counties this year. I know my friend Carl has already left, but I'll still say nice things about him. It's been a pleasure to work with him, and I applaud the Moore administration for choosing to go all in and find those kind of partnerships. I think it's an appropriate segue to our time here with you. We've been visiting all 24 counties in the city of Baltimore as part of our tour throughout the state, and I got to say, what's been great is that that's very much the spirit with which MACo operates. We believe that every county deserves to have an equal voice in the representation of their organization here. And it's actually been very rewarding for me and Director Sanderson as we've gone through to see how consistent the themes have been. Concerns about blueprint and funding, school construction, education transparency, transportation funding, higher ed, community college, housing issues, solar siting, you name it. Big counties, small counties, rural, urban, more Republican, more Democratic. We have so much more in common than we have different. And so it's been a real pleasure to do that. Looking forward to providing some updates. Director Sanderson has been providing updates sort of where we've been, but also the look ahead to the year. But of course, one of the best parts of our visits is also hearing from you all about what's happening in Kent and in your communities here. So as someone who's on the other side of the bay, I will say I do enjoy bringing my boat across the Chesapeake and spending some time in Rock Hall. So from your neighbor across the bay, it's great to be here today. Thanks for having us. I'll turn things over to Michael.
You can come as long as you go home.
And Nate, you're right about one thing. What I've found is the problems, regardless of how big the county is, the problems are the same, except the big ones have to add more zeros to the answer. And that's what how we generally feel about it.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for the time this morning. I'm Michael Sanderson, Director of the Maryland Association of Counties. We try and serve and assist all the county governments in Baltimore City, provide services directly to every Maryland resident. We do a lot of important stuff on the ground and try and bring that voice to Annapolis as they weigh budgets and policies and so forth that tend to trickle down and affect all of us. Brought a packet of stuff. I don't want to go through that in a whole lot of detail, but I'll make a quick few mentions of issues that were important this last session and continue to be with us. A lot of policy gets set in Annapolis at the statewide level, but an awful lot of implementation happens locally. That's part of the partnership we have with our state leaders. So I'll mention a few things and then work my way to sort of the biggest conversation topic we've been collectively having, sort of budget and fiscal, and how the requirements of the ambitious education plan, the blueprint for Maryland, fits into that picture for both the state and for the counties. So let me start with some kind of non-fiscal stuff, although almost everything has some connection to dollars, right? I'll start with a couple of things that were big issues last session and not completely behind us. had a lot of attention on housing this last year, particularly affordable and achievable sort of workforce housing and a missing middle in the overall housing market. It's a weird issue. For most of my time with MACO, which has been a pretty long time, we wouldn't have thought of what the private sector is building and providing in housing or any other area as being exactly a county government matter. But I think there's a growing consensus that we do have a shortfall in housing. It takes it has a different look in different parts of the state, but just about every jurisdiction has some degree of concern on that front. Some of that is government, and some of that is just the market. Interest rates being high make a lot of projects less affordable than they might have been at one point. So we know we're in the middle of that. General Assembly wanted to target some things. The governor brought in a number of bills. We actively got into that conversation early and said, let's try and be part of a solution, steer this away from some of the things that would be just a takeover of local zoning or wipe out counties who are using tools like adequate public facilities laws, things like that. We ended up, General Assembly passed a bill, a series of bills, but the one centerpiece bill trying to accelerate projects that are getting low-income housing assistance through the state. If the state's repurposing its own property, turning it into housing, give that sort of a green tape sort of treatment. A little extra density bonuses around train stations. There's a handful of things that are kind of narrow shots as opposed to the big, broad, the state doesn't want locals to do their zoning A, B, and C. As you'd imagine, there's pushback from our local governments on community input on land use generally, and that's a pretty central issue of what we do. I don't think those issues are fully behind us. I expect we're going to have another lively legislative session with housing policy in the mix, but one good one behind us that I think for the most part our local governments are okay with is a better place to be than just hand-to-hand combat on every sort of thing. So continue on that issue. The county executive mentioned solar siting. This is an issue that we've been at this table and talked to your predecessors in some cases on actually here in Kent. You were one of the first hot spots for solar developments who get to play by the PSC rules as if they're a giant power plant, if they're a sufficient size solar spot. We're trying to work toward a middle ground, along with the solar industry, along with environmentalists, along with the Farm Bureau, and folks who have a stake in ag land preservation and so forth, to try and move towards something that says, okay, the state has mostly preempted local sort of interference on solar projects. The state needs to get to its clean energy goals. You can't pipe in, far away solar here. You lose too much in transmission. It needs to come from close by. We know the pressures on your farmland in particular are really heavy. It'd be nice to see more attention on the built-up area and rooftop and industrial areas and so forth, but those projects don't pencil out well. Cheap ag land is just by far the best way for an investor to sort of parachute in, try and make a profitable project here. We don't have a strong hand to deal on this front because the courts have mostly ruled us out on the big projects. We're trying to come to some middle ground to smooth things out. So I'm hopeful we can end up with, as solar projects happen, maybe they can contribute to a pot that helps us continue ag land preservation, buying easements and that sort of thing, to at least have some A and B at the same time. So we'll continue to work on that. I think last year I was before you sort of bemoaning that the state implementation of adult use cannabis, the voters said they wanted it. It's now in the Maryland Constitution. Legislature had to do an implementing bill, and they gave us all of 2 words of guidance on location of the sites. They said reasonable zoning. Nobody knows what the term reasonable zoning means. Zoning has lots of case law on what zoning is, but no one knows what reasonable zoning meant. They passed another bill this year with our encouragement and support that gave us, a couple pages worth of text on you're allowed to do certain things. If you want to create a buffer away from schools or from houses of worship and so forth, you've got some guidance on this is okay to do at this distance. You can have one license holder have a buffer around one to another. If you want to keep it away from purely residentially zoned areas, you can keep 100 feet away from there. So you've got some tools in the toolbox that are clear. You can do this, and the state law makes it really clear. It's a better place to be as you try and, if you're going to go ahead and do some implementation on where the new retail facilities ought to be, be, you have more guidance on what's okay on that front. It's a better place than where we were a year ago. So I'll skip what might be another 10, 15, 20, 65 other items to talk about and just cut to the chase on fiscal issues, which is on everybody's mind. I'll try and do this in a quick whirlwind, and if you'd like to talk further, I'm glad to do that. But multiple moving parts here. We're in a quirky economy where the usual reliable indicators of the strength of today's economy aren't telling the story the way they usually do. Ordinarily, you can look at the unemployment rate and have a pretty good idea how strong is Maryland's economy. Right now, our unemployment rate is below 3%. That would suggest that we are going gangbusters and we have a super red-hot economy, and nobody really feels that. Consumer sentiment is weak. Business decision makers are feeling shaky. It's an odd circumstance. We're also we're working our way through a cliff of federal funding that has faded out and disappeared and so forth. All that has left the public sector, the state in particular, feeling a bit of a pinch. They look at their budget. The state's general fund budget is about $25 billion. They're looking at a shortfall for the coming year of probably $600, $800 million. That's the kind of thing that Annapolis can usually handle. It's a big number. $600, $800 million is a lot of money, but as a practical matter, they've been able to negotiate stuff of that magnitude without necessarily like turning the ship over. After a couple years of that magnitude of a problem, they switch gears because the blueprint, the big 10-year commitment to public education, getting a lot more out of our public schools and doing more for our kids who are being served there. The state has money in a trust fund. It's basically casino money by another constitutional amendment several years before the blueprint. This money's reserved for big educational initiatives, and they built up a balance. They're paying for the blueprint out of a sock, out of the piggy bank, as opposed to out of cash. But it's a couple years down the road. This is the FY26 budget. They'll have proposed this coming January. In FY28 is when they got to pay for the blueprint in cash, and their problem of up to $1 billion suddenly becomes a $3 billion problem. That is of the magnitude where it's real tough. We don't yet know. There's no clear, sense or messaging from legislative leaders or the governor on exactly what the plan could be. You could sort of whistle past the graveyard and get to the big problem and deal with it then, or you could try and do something soon. To do something, there's really only three ways to get at it. You either go to the bulk of the state budget and say we're going to carve back, we're going to slow down, we might not be able to live up to the negotiations we did with state employees, we'll cut back on service in some way here or there, that sort of thing. We've seen that kind of thing, that sort of belt tightening big picture, sometimes that happens. You could go to the blueprint and say this is more expensive than we can handle. There's so many things that have changed on the ground because of COVID and enrollment and the labor market being super different, cost of materials is super different, that maybe we need to reassess what the blueprint looks like and what the timetables are, and maybe when do we get to the final destination. Or do they come up with, we need more revenues to be able to live up to the pledges that we've made and what people are expecting on both general fund, general sort of services and with public education. Those are really the only three ways to go at the state budget and try and target it. If the thinking comes together in the General Assembly to do some combination of those sort of things, they might find themselves with a fiscal circumstance that's not so terrible a couple years down the road. We're in the third year of a 4-year political term. None of those things will be super popular. The idea of furloughing state employees or saying we won't have a Meals on Wheels program or whatever you do to really tighten the belt in state government, not going to be popular. Raising taxes or broadening taxes or finding new things to raise revenues from wouldn't be super popular. And awful lot of stakeholders in this education plan to say you've got to wait longer or these kids will have to wait longer for the services that we've been promising to them, that'd be unpopular too. So they're in a tough spot. Dollars and cents don't add up right at the moment. It's not obvious that they have to do something massive right away, but the big takeaway for us in local government is if they don't have a big solution anytime soon, then we probably have a couple years ahead of difficult fiscal strain between the state and the local governments. That's usually the setting when they're looking for what can we save $100 million on? What can we save a couple $100 million on? And, sometimes there's something that just comes out of the ether. We change some actuarial assumptions for the pension system or some employee benefits program, and we'll amortize that over blah, blah, blah. We save ourselves $200 million. Something like that can happen here or there, but this is also the setting when they've looked to local government, say, pick up more cost of teacher pensions, or pick up what used to be your share of highway user revenue. We need that for state transportation. The state transportation fund is also, by the way, in a shortfall. If you had conversations with the State Department, they're saying, we don't have money for new projects. If you already got something, shovels in the ground, we'll keep going with that, maybe slower than we had, but no new projects. So they're the first part of this fiscal distress, but it's all tied together. So they have a fiscal issue on their plate. It's not white hot at the moment. And the state theoretically could limp through the next few years with a reduced transportation program and with not doing a whole lot of bells and whistles in the general fund and sort of shuffle through the next few years of the blueprint. Then they'll have a big number problem sometime next term to really grapple with. Or they can try and do something sooner, but the smart money might be, this is the environment where we get squeezed most frequently. So we'll be playing defense on fiscal issues in all likelihood for the next couple of years. That's not a brand new circumstance for us, but it's also not the most comfortable place to be trying to work with everybody in Annapolis. So anyway, that's an amalgamation of where the state budget and fiscal stuff is. The counties are already feeling the pinch on education. I know your jurisdiction, you've already had to take a really harsh look at the non-education parts of your county budget in order to fund your pieces of the blueprint, and I'm sure your forecast shows that continuing to be a challenge. I think everybody understands that that's where we are. The counties more and more each year are getting caught up in those numbers. And the last thing I'll add on the blueprint debate, which is I think important for you all to hear, is even in some of the jurisdictions that aren't yet saying we can't afford the blueprint number, there's local friction on the debate over what to do with public education. It looks a little different than the last couple of years, but this spring, the different flavor was kind of, okay, your required county funding to do your share of the blueprint is this amount, but the school system will say, but we have to spend so much of that money on these new things that are identified specifically in the blueprint plan that we don't have enough money to do, even with you living up to your number and the state doing their number, we can't continue things that have been successful or popular or effective here back home. So we have a teacher mentoring program, or we're doing gifted and talented services, or football or band, or things that are popular and things that are well supported and so forth. Well, we just can't afford that because in the service of the things that are on the list for the blueprint, that stuff isn't there. So we need more money from the county on top of the strain to reach the blueprint number to continue the things that people like around town. That is a more contentious county budget debate about education, but also the bigger picture than we've seen in some prior years. And that's happening not just in small rural jurisdictions, but in some of the larger metropolitan jurisdictions as well. So this implementation has been a challenge. A lot of people see it, including the governor, who came to the MACO conference and said, everything needs to be on the table. We want to get to these goals. I don't think the governor's interested in saying, let's cancel the blueprint. I don't think legislative leaders are interested in that either, but he uses some soft language a little bit. He says, I'm stubborn about our goals, but I'm flexible on the means to get there. So I don't know exactly what that means, but if it's about, what dates do all these various intermediate timetables have to land, when do you have to hit your mark for these various components of the blueprint, and what's the final year and so forth, maybe that kind of stuff is on the table this legislative session, possibly. So anyway, a little bit cloudy of a crystal ball, but I know it's been on virtually everybody's mind as we've been meeting with counties across the state. So with that, I'll close by saying we're delighted to have you engaged, involved in our conferences through our legislative committee. Our organization is at its best when we hear things from members, and it's a bottom-up process. So delighted to hear from you, especially if there's something that I missed policy-wise.
I certainly think you covered the highlights of the same issues that we talk about, and I think everybody else talks about around the state. we'll just, I guess we gotta wait and see what comes out of this next legislative session is, we seem to know what the challenges are, but we're a little short on answers just yet, so that'll be interesting to watch that unfold.
I will say just a quick note to append onto the former delegate Anderton. We are probably going to be in the middle of a battle over highway user revenues. We saw a proposal in the governor's fiscal plan last year to sort of flat fund highway user revenue and not have the funding that's supposed to come for FY '26 and '27. We lost a great champion in Delegate Anderton, who is a front level, like high level sponsor of the bill, twisting arms, jumping up and down, that sort of stuff on this issue. One thing that did happen, though, is when the governor proposed cutting those funds, and the legislature ultimately pushed back and decided not to do it in the budget reconciliation bill, we found ourselves some new allies in the General Assembly, folks who weren't even in the legislature back in 2009 when this cut originally happened, and now they understand what this would mean on the ground for bus service or for local maintenance and that sort of stuff. It's good to have allies signed up. So honestly, there was a side light that was actually sort of good of fighting and winning that fight last year. We got some momentum with newer legislators. And 15 years in the General Assembly is like measuring the eras of the dinosaurs and so forth. So a lot of folks just don't remember 2009 at all. I know we do.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I mean, because the budget stuff is so acute across, it's really been a strong, I mean, we've had Republicans, Democrats, the small counties, large counties, sitting down, talking about the impact of cuts, talking about the challenges of meeting our local share on blueprint. So it's been really rewarding to see counties across the state coming together to really amplify the questions and the concerns, as you said, Mr. President, as we sort of enter this session. So hopefully we do find those solutions soon.
Gentlemen, any questions?
We could be here all day long, but I don't know that we're going to iron out and have any answers. So, I mean, to me, you guys spoke about a few of the things that really impact Kent County, which is the impact of the solar. Obviously, Kerwin, which who knows where that's still up in the air. But another thing that I know it's pretty important to us is the school funding formula. And I know I've been told we're not allowed to say funding formula. We're not allowed to approach it that way. But our cost share with the state just doesn't work for Kent County. And I know we went over there last year and we tried to make headway on that. But that's something for us, and I'm sure, and I know we're going to go over there again this year and make our plea to try to change not the formula, but our share.
I think the way the state calculates wealth, that's their defined term, is wealth of each jurisdiction. And it's meant to be a stand-in for, well, if you threw an average tax rate at whatever you've got to tax and then put a proportional share of that toward education, here's where you'd be, and that sort of thing. You rarely can tell the complete story with just a little bit of arithmetic on a cocktail napkin. And that's effectively what the state's trying to do there, is that we know what it is because it says right here in the law. So, got to make your case, right? And you've got some allies there too.
We've been talking about that. I've been sitting here for 26 years. We've been talking about it the entire 26 years that I've been around here. And no matter where we go, we get the same answer, is that we'll discuss anything you want to discuss, but we will not discuss that wealth formula. Well, with us, if you don't discuss that, that's the end of the story. I mean, that's our real issue. Every category that you can talk about, whether it's average yearly income or the gross national product or GDP or whatever thing you want to talk about, Kent County's way down the list in 20-something place most times. Until you come to the wealth formula, and then they tell us we're a wealthy county, and we just have a little trouble figuring that out.
Right. Property on the water.
Yeah.
It's generally a common ingredient in where these things are strange, but you end up in weird company with Garrett County around Deep Creek Lake, this jurisdiction, Talbot County, Ocean City driving numbers for Worcester County, end up with several jurisdictions, tremendous outliers where the population in your school does not look like a wealthy county, and for the state to treat you that way is peculiar.
And with us, the one thing that's very noticeable in Kent County is that we are losing our young people. I mean, when our only consolidated high school opened up in, I think, '73, there was 1,350 students in our high school, 9th through 12th. Now we're below 600. That's the difference. And obviously there's some good parts to that, but then when you lose your young people, you also lose your volunteers, but the problems go on and on.
With the population remaining roughly the same.
We've just
Throughout
replaced the
these
young
years.
people with people that have come to Kent County to retire because it's a nice, safe place to live and all the good stuff that comes along with it. But we're having, what you talked about, housing. Housing is a real issue. My wife's in the real estate business. Every week, there's 2 or 3 people coming to her office saying, is there any place you can find me to rent in the Rock Hall or any of these areas? And unfortunately, it's not, because the real estate prices have went way up, and people that can afford to buy them have bought up the places to retire, had second homes and stuff. So it's an ongoing issue. I don't know when we talk about affordable housing today, I'm not sure anybody knows what that is just yet. I mean, out the end of my lane, I talk about it all the time. There was a little 1,100 square foot house, a couple bedrooms, brand new, but it was just built, went for $300 and some thousand. I mean, I don't know what affordable housing is anymore. And that part of the American dream of buying a home and getting a job and supporting a family, it's in jeopardy, I think.
And to that point, to the rental point, I think the state may have to intervene. I know, not that I encourage that, but, this whole Airbnb market is also what's driving, the rentals certainly in Kent County. I can't speak for, I can read, but I mean, in Kent County, it's really driving people are just renting them out for the weekend and making more money than they could rent it out.
But on a brighter note, we do appreciate the work for Mako. I wanted to point that out too before you leave. I mean, that's the one place that we do feel like we have a voice, and it's a great organization. We're glad to support it.
Glad to have your participation. Thank you.
Anything else, John?
No, I think you guys have covered it pretty well. I don't want to echo the same thoughts that, especially what Commissioner Nickerson said. I'm kind of in a holding pattern to see what's really going to come out of all this. Right now, it's very, very challenging at the local level to meet the blueprint requirements, and it's only going to get worse. So I'm really curious to see what they do in this next session.
I'm going to go one more step. One more thing I wanted to point out, and with what John talked about last year, we tried to get this funding formula taken a look at. We haven't built a school here, I don't know how long, 50 years or more.
It's over 50 years.
I mean, our middle school that we're still using is probably 70-some years old. But, to us, because we are considered a wealthy county, our capital projects, like a new school, we pay 50% of that. That's $80 million school. You can figure 19,000 some people in the county got to pay back $40 million. Some other counties, I'll let them be nameless, but they don't pay nothing. It's hard for me to believe that it can be that much difference from one county, $40 million difference between one county and the other county. And that's obviously the reason why we haven't built a school in a lot of years. So that's just hard for us to swallow. But I wanted to point
In a
that
way, it's the adding the zeros, trying to build several new schools at a 50% match. I empathize with the challenge.
out. I'm sure you did.
You know, we get praised all the time for our ag, our farmland. 86% of our land mass here in this county is agriculture. And we're very, very proud of that. And we want to maintain it as much as we can. But there's a big difference in the tax revenue that comes from farmland, as you well know. So to, say that we are a wealthy county, we're far from that. Far from that.
All right,
Could we trouble you all for another picture? Would that be?
we could certainly do
I
that.
wish I was dressed a little better than that, because I have to leave here and go somewhere as soon as this meeting's over, and it's an outside event, but, sure.
We're behind you.
Huh? Yeah, I'll stand behind.
We want to call Scott Boone and get him down here.
Let me use your hair.
Sure.
Thank you all again.
Michael and John, have safe trips back.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Next is our departmental appointment of Jillian Coleman, Director of Parks and Recreation, to speak about proposed discounted rates.
Good news. She's full of good news.
Always.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Today I'm here to propose approval for discounted rates for community organization, employees, and nonprofit organizations. So in my role as Director of Parks and Rec, I've received numerous requests from organizations seeking discount rates. As a position as a Director of Parks and Rec, I try to be fair with every organization, profit, nonprofit, employees, and it's kind of hard to sometimes keep all that straight when something only occurs once a year or once every 2 years, but I really focus on trying to be fair to everyone. So during our August PRAB meeting, the board did approve the proposed discounted rates for community organization, employees, and nonprofits, which is entitled in your packet that you have. And I'm just kind of looking for approval from the county commissioners to move forward with these proposed discounted rates so that it's in black and white, it's written down. I make sure that I stay fair to everyone in the community by having something kind of in writing and approved by the commissioners and more concrete. By providing these discounts, we can certainly facilitate potential collaborations with our public service agencies, employees, and nonprofits, hopefully paving the way for them to join us and being able to assist us with projects, events, or business opportunities for the Department of Parks and Rec and other county departments. So I'm just here to get approval for the proposed discounted rates. Anyone have any questions?
These proposed discounts, obviously we wish we could do more, but this won't negatively impact your budget, so to speak?
No.
Okay.
So when I did review that, based on the proposed budgets and how many times we do rentals and things, it's only going to impact my budget about $2,000 to $3,000. So it's not a high impact.
Any other questions? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed discount rates as presented by the Director of Parks and Recreation.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Guys, have a great day.
Mr. Jim Miller, Director of Human Resources.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
I brought Rachel Morlock along with me. Rachel is handling the recruitment on the position you have in front of you this morning. So if there's any detailed questions about the interviewing or the process, she's here to answer questions. Pretty straightforward position for a family advocate position for the Kent Family Center. It's a part-time position. What did we say, 35 hours?
Hours a week,
35
yes.
hours a week. You have the information on the recommended candidate as well as the other individual. There was one other individual, two, who was considered for the position. The candidate, the recommended candidate, actually is already in our employ, but the two directors, Jill and Lisa, have agreed that if she's accepted for this position, she'll relinquish her responsibilities in Parks and Rec. Actually makes the process a little smoother on our end. Any questions we can cover?
Do we have any questions?
No, sir.
Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the part-time family advocate position as presented by HR.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
Second, yes, sir.
Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Jim, before you leave, and I hate to bring this up again, but I've been contacted by some of the county employees who are questioning under Section 3 of special consideration. A, any active employee who has met or who will meet the requisite years of credible service by 9/1/2025. There's some county employees that are very, very close to meeting that requirement. And I would like to ask you and your staff to go back and maybe get back to us on exactly how many employees we're talking about that are within a 2-year period of actually meeting the 30-year requirement for health care.
So you're talking about going all the way out to September of 2027?
Well,
I just want to be clear on what we're researching.
potentially, yes.
Okay, well, we can certainly,
Potentially,
Run
because
the math.
I think that there's, when we spoke about this at a previous meeting, I think there were at least 5 or 6 that were in that category. And after spending 28-plus years with the county, I think it's something that the three of us should maybe take a closer look at to make sure that everyone's being treated as fairly as we possibly can. I mean, when you spend 28 years working for the county, knowing that you're working towards that 30-year mark for the benefit of health care, I want to make sure we haven't shortchanged anybody. And
understood. No
and
problem,
so-
we can do that research.
Yeah.
That won't be that complicated for us.
if you wouldn't mind doing that, and then maybe reporting back to us on it so we can make a decision whether we want to change that or not.
Absolutely, no problem.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Dan Mattson, our Director of Public Works. Got a couple issues to speak with us. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning.
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 So yeah, I do have 2 items on today's agenda. Happy to report none of them are exactly issues. Hopefully good news, or at least neutral. But the first item is simply a renewal of our water and wastewater contract with the town of Galena. This contract's been in place for a number of years. The main difference with this contract, there's two differences. The first one is very minor, but just a clarification about our IT department's role and what they're responsible for. That was provided by Scott Boone and April Bitter from IT. The second change is an increase in rates. Obviously, over time, employees are paid more, expense costs go up, et cetera. We have not changed the rates in the last 5 years in this agreement, but after evaluating the current costs associated with revenue, it was determined that about 16% increase in the monthly fee would be proposed. This would bring the monthly fee to $7,872 per month from Galena. The town has accepted that change as well as the minor IT clarification. And a final note is that our schedule of vehicles and equipment that can be rented to or offered by the county to Galena, we've changed that from an hourly rate to a daily rate. That's much more in line with with the industry, and also allows for some of the ancillary costs of renting that equipment, the transportation, the maintenance, things like that, to be included. We did compare to other vendors and are still considerably the most efficient option for that front, but we wanted to switch that to daily. So with that said, the town of Galena has already signed the agreement, and it is brought to you today for signature and approval.
Any questions? And I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the supervisory agreement renewal with the town of Galena water and wastewater treatment facilities.
Got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it.
Thank you. The second item is the potential award of the contract for the courthouse lobby renovation and expansion. I know there's some representatives from the courthouse here today. Bids were received for this project in late August. A total of 4 bids were received. 2 were tightly bunched around the low bid number, with Bloom's Contracting Incorporated being the low bidder at $59,200 to complete all work. The scope of this project includes renovation and expansion of the existing lobby. There's an office adjacent to it when you walk in on the right-hand side. The wall separating that office from the lobby will be demolished, and that area will be used generally as more space for the security equipment and personnel checking people entering the courthouse. There will be new flooring and ceiling throughout to provide some consistency to the space, and some replacement of antiquated light fixtures. The current budget for this project is $45,229. As I mentioned, the low bid is $59,200. I understand that it has been budgeted for a number of years, which likely explains the overrun of cost. So that means a total of $13,971 in additional funding would be needed in order to award this contract. I believe at the time the architect's proposal was approved by the commissioners, it was indicated that ARPA funds would be used to to cover any gap in funding, should the commissioners intend to award. You certainly have that option, or to fund via county contingency as well. And other than that, I do note that there are some additional funding requests coming in for the courthouse in the near future as well, looking at access, card reader upgrades and things, I believe between $15,000 and $20,000. That is not brought to you today, but anytime I ask for additional funding, I want to make sure I provide the full scope of what's on the horizon, as we did with the HVAC equipment. So with all that said, we are requesting the additional $13,971. And if that funding is provided, then to award this contract to Bloom's Contracting Incorporated.
And you did point out that that money could come out of the ARPA funds.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, that's where I'd like to see it come from, because it's, but, any other questions? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the contract as presented, and that, for a total of $59,200, and that we allocate $13,971 from ARPA funds.
Second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it.
Thank you, and for your general awareness, that contract is a 90-day term upon issuance of notice to proceed, so we will get the notice to proceed out quickly, and it'll be about 3 months for contract duration for that project.
Very good.
Thank you.
Dan, before you leave, are we still on schedule to move some dirt in October for the new EMS building?
We are currently on schedule, yes. Pete Landon, Logan Quinn from the EMS facility, as well as Carrie, my deputy director, and I have been meeting with the firm who won that bid, the design build firm. On that topic, we are working on color selection, and our recommendation was a blue roof with a light stone color wall and blue wainscoting. I know aesthetics came up in a previous meeting, so if you have any input or disagreement on that, the detention center that's out there now has a red roof, but we thought the direction the county has gone recently with consistent branding, using the county colors to the greatest extent possible made sense. We're also investigating a potential add-on to the project to add a covered portico entrance to upgrade the building aesthetic. Possibly with some signage either there or on the building. I know there was a name dedication. We're working through things like that. I don't have definite numbers associated with it right now, but I would anticipate at a future meeting in the near future, we'll have some potential options to upgrade the aesthetic as requested.
At a previous meeting, there was some discussion about trees that may need to be removed.
Yes.
And it was mentioned that the town may be implementing something on October 1st.
Yes.
So we might want to keep that in mind.
Yes, those are on our schedule to be removed this week, I believe.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Judge, while you're in the audience, you have anything to add?
No, sir, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
It's been a long process, I just wanted to be here in case there was a question.
No, we're quite aware.
Thank you.
And wasn't it last week that we talked about those HVACs going to be replaced as well? So
yes,
we're paying attention to the courthouse, Judge.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are you prepared to maybe give a brief update on the flooding situation that we had in the basement and the new hearing room proposal that might be moving up into the lands record area? And I don't want to put anybody on the spot, I was just curious.
I can.
That's
I can speak.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
It's too late for that. That's what I'm here for.
I can speak to the flooding and the repairs. We have been going back and forth between the repair contractor and the insurance agency, specifically to finalize the cost of repair, have that approved by the insurance company before we do the work, and to include potential mold remediation and air quality testing in what is funded by the insurance company. We will have all parties, the repair contractor and the insurance representative, in the courthouse Wednesday morning for a meeting that will hopefully lead to a final agreement on all costs and allow us to begin the work.
Has the air quality testing happened yet?
The testing has not happened yet. Our intent is to have that confirmed within the insurance claim prior to spending those funds. However, some portable air filtration units were brought into the courthouse for the interim until that testing could be done.
So are you saying the testing's going to occur on Wednesday?
The testing will not occur Wednesday, but we're hoping to leave the meeting Wednesday with agreement among all parties on the exact scope of what the insurance company will fund. And assuming we have that, I would expect within a week to have that done.
Due to the potential health risk, regardless whether the insurance company covers that or not, I feel like liability-wise and just the proper thing to do is to go ahead and ask that you move forward with that testing.
Okay.
In hopes that insurance pays it.
It would be
But-
at risk, yes.
But if not, then we'll have to find the funding to take care of it.
Sure.
I mean, we don't want anybody's health at risk, and I don't think it is probably right now. I hope it's not. But that's something that I think we ought to, pay particular attention to.
That's not a problem. We can authorize
If
them.
you
to
all
proceed.
agree.
Yes.
No, I do agree, sure.
Okay.
All right.
And I guess you're still looking at the lands record area.
Well, I'm not, depending on what, from the court's perspective, I'm waiting to see what the mold inspection shows to see how bad the problem is in the basement. Because I understand that recreating that hearing room in another place will be much more expensive and may not be covered by the insurance money to recreate it or reconstruct it in the basement. But from my way of thinking, all of that hinges on how safe it is or how smart it is to leave it in the basement, because the basement has been a problem and is likely to always be a problem. But if it doesn't present any sort of health or safety issues, it may be a problem that's one worth maintaining as opposed to considerable cost to build another hearing room on the first floor. So it just depends on how bad the basement is.
Makes sense.
Well, I'm very familiar with that courtroom down there, as you well might imagine. Historically, it's always been a problem. Anytime you put any type of facility like our 911 center, EOC, or a courtroom in the basement, in these buildings that have foundation issues where water runs in. I mean, this particular incident involved a
Water fountain.
failure of a water fountain. But prior to that, if you were to have a big tropical storm or some heavy
It
rainfall.
was always moist down there.
It's always very moist out. And regardless, in my opinion, it may be more cost-effective short-term to put it back down there as long as it's safe. But in long-term, it's probably not very smart, in my opinion. And I'm not an expert in
No, and I
any of this.
I
but-
tend to agree with that thinking, but without knowing the scope of the problem in the basement.
And the cost.
Right. It's a balancing act as to how, if they come back and say the basement, there's mold in the basement, it's not healthy to be there, then
we have no choice.
Then we have no choice. If they say it's not, there's mold, but it's not dangerous, or we can do this thing, that thing, or the other thing to create it, then we have a decision to make. But until we have the information, at least from my perspective, it's premature to decide which option it makes the most sense long-term.
And that will take place when? When will we know the answer to that question?
That's a good question. It's been a couple months already.
Well, given the direction today, we'll authorize the testing immediately. I'd expect it completed within a week.
Okay. Very good.
All right.
Then we'll talk again.
So the current operation of that courtroom is being done somewhere else now,
Yes.
and it's adequate for what you need.
So far, the district court is usually available 2 days a week unless they have something specially scheduled in there. So I think that we have been able to use it on Thursdays. And I think that the Register of Wills, who uses it for hearings, has either been able to use it or find another space within the building to get by until there's a long-term solution.
Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
And we'll be made aware of the results as soon as they as soon as we know what they are.
Absolutely.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Mayor,
Don't give you much escape room.
Shelley?
Okay, I have one announcement. This really is just a notice for you as well as the general public, but we have been notified by the Public Service Commission that we are having a public hearing on the 40 acres of 199 acre property located at 10066 Peacock Corner Road in Millington. This is for a CPCN, or a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity application. The hearing will occur virtually on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 7 PM. There are two pieces of information I'd like to push out regarding that. First is if anybody wishes to participate virtually, this is a virtual hearing, you need to sign up in advance to speak by sending an email referencing case number 97422, and this is the email address, psc.pulj@gmail.com. That email needs to be received by noon on October 2nd. Otherwise, a recording of the hearing will be available on the YouTube channel of bit.ly/2x6WLIP. And in addition to the actual hearing, they're also accepting written comments, which can be sent electronically through the PSC, the Public Service Commission's portal, at https://www.psc.md.us/make-a-public-comment/.
There's not going to be a quiz on this afterwards, is there?
No, but I just wanted it on the record, so
Yeah.
somebody can hit rewind and listen to that again, or feel free to call the Commissioner's office and we can give that information out. And again, whether you're requesting to attend virtually to speak or to file a written comment, please reference case number 9742.
You know, this is not, I mean, obviously, this is a question I've asked numerous times, and I still don't get an answer, and maybe there is none, but this is this 40-acre parcel?
Yes.
What does
Peacock Corner
40 acres of solar plant mean as far as money for the county?
So the way this is taxed
Because this is not the first, I mean, there's been several of these things built throughout the state of Maryland. Somebody's got to know, are they worth so much an acre? I mean, I don't have a clue
We're
how
taxed-
Kent County
tax
benefits
their equipment.
financially.
Right, I've
We
never
tax their
heard a
personal
rule of
property
thumb
tax.
on exactly how much equipment can be placed on a 1 acre parcel, and then multiply it by however many acres. But the tax that we receive is based on the amount of money that the equipment is worth. So in year one, it's gonna be worth 100% of its value. Year two, it's on a 30-year depreciation schedule, so year two, it's gonna be worth less and less and less as the equipment depreciates.
I asked
So,
that.
so for budgeting purposes, we got to wait 30 years to find out what the project.
Well, you
brought in.
could do a pilot program
There's other
where,
counties that have prorated this. They've gotten more of a definitive number by amortizing it across the 30 years. So that way they know what they're budgeting
Right.
when it comes time to do the budget.
And the downside to that is you're gonna end up with less money than the full tax amount. So if you
Right.
sign a pilot, the
Right.
incentive to sign a pilot is it's less money, but
Right.
you're gonna know.
yeah,
So it's one of those things where I don't know that I've never heard of anybody estimate how much the equipment is worth per acre for one of these solar farms. I'm sure there's an estimate out there, but I'm also sure that it probably depends on which equipment a particular developer uses.
And what Shelley says reflects my understanding. A way to look at it is, if you just take the tax revenue, it is likely that you will receive more money over time, but it's front-ended because of depreciation. If you do a pilot, you get less money, or you would expect to get less money over time, but you know what you're getting every year, and you're still going to get money near the end.
Right.
The
You
developers.
can structure it
That's right.
any way you want if you do a
Correct.
pilot.
Correct. The developers tend to like pilots because they have a lot of costs at the front end, and they want to defer costs because they're going to be making money on the project as it goes on. So they tend to like pilots because they're going to pay less overall, and they're paying less on the front end. But again, what a government would consider on a pilot is the fact that you can budget. It makes it easier to budget. You know what you're getting each year.
Right. The pilot we signed out in Massey, we did just the opposite. Instead of receiving more upfront, we're receiving less upfront and more over time. That helped the solar company and it helped the county, and we
Right.
know what we're gonna get year over year.
I had a conversation with Pat Merritt the other day just about this particularly, because we have asked several times, we'd like to know what the revenue is that comes, the tax revenue, from any of these solar projects throughout the county. And specifically the one out on Morgan Neck Road to be built there, and the one up on Peacock's Corner, if in fact that happens. She indicated to me that we would not really know until the state issues an assessment
Correct.
She's correct.
on exactly what they're gonna tax on, the amount of equipment.
Right.
So there's no clear answer right now without an assessment from the state.
Right. The other thing is, these projects are new.
Right.
Yeah,
So there's not a history and a track record to see assessments, because all this is brand new.
I will say that when we went through the exercise in Massey, when we were negotiating the pilot, the solar developer had an estimate of what they planned on spending. So they know going into it, and as conversations proceed, we could certainly ask them for that information.
Well, I would like to sign up to speak, or one of us, and my idea is, and I haven't talked to the other commissioners about this, but I guess first and foremost, I don't like the way that the state is circumventing the county, the local jurisdiction. So I think that somebody needs to, in my opinion, somebody needs to, let the state know at this meeting, we're not happy that, it's just another, in my way, it's just another way, you just hush up, you pay this and don't worry about this, you pay this again, don't worry about that. So that's what bothers me as much as anything about this project, is that the state has taken it out of local jurisdiction and said, we're allowing this to happen.
Yeah, under our zoning, they should be filing for a special exception, but they've completely bypassed that because their position is it's preempted by state law, they don't have to. So they have not filed anything for a special exception with our planning and zoning. And just, Mr. Mackey can confirm that.
it's anything over 5 acres, correct?
Yeah, well, they wouldn't meet, for that particular zone, they wouldn't meet the criteria under our zoning law. They could in other districts, but not that district. So they've chosen just to bypass our planning and zoning and not apply. In some areas, developers will go ahead and apply for planning and zoning. Here, they've chosen not to. And the
Well-
argument is they're not doing it because they don't have to do it.
Unfortunately, Tom, I don't know why anybody would do that. I mean,
Right.
if I'm a solar developer and I know I can do it this way, but
Right.
maybe not this way, then I'm gonna.
Yeah,
so-
I think some might have done it for goodwill or just in case, because in the past, because there were some uncertainties. But I think with the way state law has developed.
I was
and
just
there
going to
a-
say, I think that was before those precedent had really been set.
Yeah, Judge Booth's decision a few years ago really made clear that there's preemption. So, I don't necessarily agree with some of this, but the law is what it is. And so
Right.
they're not going through our planning and zoning process. That being said, the law does say you're supposed to give due consideration to our planning and zoning. What that means is not the clearest thing in the world.
Well, that's
And-
like reasonable zoning.
Correct, so
That's
so
exactly
you say
right.
due consideration, we say if you're putting this project in this zone, it should be limited to 5 acres, it shouldn't be 40 acres. If you want a 40-acre project, you should put it in other zones in the county, and we do have land available for that. And we made those arguments in the Morgneck Solar case. We said, we have adequate land available, a project of this size could go in other places and it's more suited. The Public Service Commission judge basically said, we want these projects, you don't have enough land available, you say you do, but we think you should have more land available, and so it's gonna go here.
And Director Sanderson was not kidding when he brought this up as he wasn't just saying it because he's here in Kent County and he knows that we've had issues. Every conversation at Mako, this whole preemption conversation comes up. It is an ongoing conversation statewide. It's rather outlandish.
Right.
It's outrageous that we're having the same conversation year over year, and we just can't seem to make headway with the state
Right.
on reinterpreting.
I went to one of the presentations at Mako on energy, and there was, I believe he was a state delegate, which was one of the speakers. And he essentially said, I hear what the counties are saying, or some of the rural counties are saying, but this is the way it's gonna be. That was just
By preparing a statement and testifying at this, I don't think we're gonna make a blip on the radar. I just maybe want to do that for my own personal sense.
I think it's a good
Yeah,
idea.
it is good to go on the record, because I
Right.
think our concerns are very valid concerns.
And I guess the reason that I've talked about this, the amount of money that we would receive from something like that, I mean, we're complaining that it's being pushed on us, but it looked like to me that solar people would come up and say, yeah, but look at what you make out of this thing. I mean, there's enough, maybe we wouldn't be quite so upset about it if we knew what income you derive from that thing. And not that we're gonna promote a bunch of them, but I just can't imagine that, look, somebody knows
At least the ballpark,
a
right?
ballpark figure of what this means to a county. I just can't believe that it's that new that nobody knows. Anyhow, whatever.
Just a comment, I think something that we should keep in mind for future is there's two things. There's the solar projects that are gonna come down the road. And there's also, and I support land preservation. But I think we need to be very careful and look at, when we're making these decisions for approval, that we don't landlock areas that would be good for economic development. I've recently heard about a potential solar project down in Betterton. And if they put it where, and if it's just a rumor,
Right behind the firehouse.
Beyond the
If they put it-
firehouse, that's
They
correct.
have
I mean, that-
received a proposal.
that's
fact.
gonna
I
landlock
can confirm that.
any potential growth that Betterton.
That's
Correct.
basically their only place to grow other than infill lots.
Yeah,
Correct.
you're right, I mean, they
Because
can't
that's
go
outside of
across
the
the
critical
bay.
area.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other farms heading out of town are preserved. So,
And I think that was
that's a
probably
great
the
concern.
county's concern about Morgneck.
correct. That's
Now,
exactly.
You know,
the
we gotta be
concern.
careful that we don't landlock our municipalities with any of these projects or potential preservation of land.
Betterton's
And I support that. I mean, I love our farmlands.
Right.
And want to preserve them. But we also can't landlock these municipalities.
Yeah, I mean, that's a similar concern. Betterton's in the same situation the county's in. This land was anticipated to be developed for growth for the town. Unfortunately, no projects have come to fruition. This one's on the table. The developers are certainly aware of what state law is right now. One of the things that Betterton needs to do, is going to be doing, is to get an ordinance enacted similar to the ordinance the county did, at least to have a say in the landscape and setbacks and everything, because right now Betterton does not have such an ordinance. That I think anywhere where there's farmland that is in an area where it might be convenient to connect to a substation, these developers are going to be looking for solar.
And it's true, let's say that this Betterton project were to move forward as proposed. It's true, they will be receiving more tax money than if it is simply an ag field like it is now. That is a true statement. But where Betterton was hoping for that economic development, let's say that becomes a residential area with a couple of shops, then that tax revenue is gonna far exceed the solar field. So it's a gamble.
Correct. The other issue is if you have residential or commercial development, you're selling more water and sewer allocations.
Correct.
And small towns that have plants that don't have many users, the rates tend to go up because you have fixed costs and you don't have that many people to share the cost around. If you get economic development and you get a little more infrastructure in there paid for by the developer and you get more users on the system, that takes pressure off from raising the rates within the town. So that's another consideration, because Betterton's not going to get, if you add up, if there's a housing development in, there'd be quite a few allocation fees that would go, plus the quarterly charges, so the town would lose all that revenue.
Another thing I think that maybe the public should be aware of is that none of this power generated stays in Kent County, Maryland. I mean, it doesn't do anything. Our bills will continue to increase. This does absolutely nothing for the power, for the citizens of Kent County, Maryland.
Okay. So, where are we? Down to public comment, media review? Anyone in the audience have any issue? Mike?
You want to bet on what it's about?
I don't know if this was brought up at the last meeting. We had a phone call conversation about use of land for parks. You and I had a conversation, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. I have a suggestion about the land that's adjacent to the parks, where the state says that you can't use it for farming as a profit builder or a revenue generator for the county. And the suggestion that I made to Ron was that we ought to get the Extension Service involved. The Extension Service is a quasi-state county entity. The Extension Service could then partner with, as an example, 4-H, and maybe use it for training purposes for 4-H members, young 4-H members. And maybe they can use the farmland as a from seed to consumer shelf type of initiative, to where they use that land for farming initiative for training purposes for 4-H. Let the Extension Service, the state would have a hard time arguing that the Extension Service can't use the land because they're a state/county department entity. So it's a suggestion of how to utilize that land for benefit of county, 4-H, and our young farmers. That was the suggestion.
Good idea.
If I could talk about the solar thing, the Public Service Commission is using, and I forget the exact phrase, but it's notice of need.
Is it public need accommodation?
Public need. And that's how they're circumventing planning and zoning. This language that they've got supersedes everything. Well, we have a need, and so therefore, you don't have a say in anything because we're showing that there's a need.
The only need is because they're making a requirement.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the administration. In terms of revenue, or in terms of taxation, corporations already know the cost of equipment, and they've already got an amortization depreciation schedule already made up. Their business plans show that. You know, they've got a 10-year, 15, 20, 30-year business plan for this solar plant. They know exactly what the costs are. They know exactly what the costs are to build it. They know exactly what the costs are to buy the equipment. They know exactly how much revenue that they're going to generate from it, or else they wouldn't do it. And as far as not coming to the county with potential revenue, that's because there isn't any. If there was any revenue that they were going to generate for the benefit of the county, they'd be at this desk telling you that, selling you on the idea.
Well, that's exactly why I've questioned it so much,
Yeah.
because it seems like to me, if there was a lot of money out there gonna be generated by these solar, they would be set, they'd be tooting that horn all the time.
Oh,
saying,
absolutely.
See all the good we might be forcing this on you, but see what all the good's coming out of it, you get, tax revenue and stuff. And it's just, the lack of that
Yeah,
makes me think that.
it sets up a red
we're
flag.
Probably not doing very well out of
Yeah,
these solar.
that's exactly right. And they have enough solar farms in and around, within our region, that they could do a pro forma. That they know exactly what the costs are, they know exactly what they're generating in revenue, they know exactly how much is given back to the counties. In our region, there's a way to do that, they just don't want to come
When
up
they
with
tell
it.
you, it depends on the equipment, the same, it's, the majority of it's all the same equipment
Yeah, it's all coming from
Just-
China. All the solar panels.
That's why I think I was trying to get to the bottom of it, of just how much we benefit from this thing, because I don't think we do benefit a lot.
Yeah, 0
Or they
point
would
squat.
be reminding us of that all the time.
Yeah, but in any event, that my whole purpose here was to provide a suggestion here, because it was, I think it was 2 meetings ago, that we were talking about how to use that land constructively. And on my drive home, I said the extension service is the way to go. The state can't have a problem with that, because the extension service is to be repetitive here, a quasi-state county entity. How could they argue with the extension service using it and use it as a training program for 4-H or anybody else? Seed the consumer shelf. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Mike.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Talking about the Ridgeport County thing, Mr. Sanderson said one word, waterfront. What percentage of Kent County's border is waterfront? I looked on the map, the only non-waterfront is the Maryland-Delaware line.
Yeah, we're,
Where Blue Line Stream on Sassafras and it's a creek. So, yes, we're 60-some% agriculture, but we're probably 96% waterfront. That's where your rich money comes from.
That's right.
So stop picking on the agriculture. That's it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, John, that's not exactly correct. Do I need to go to the microphone?
No, go ahead.
if you want people in the audience to hear
All
the
right.
live
Gotta
stream.
come up to the mic.
That starts out.
Yeah, well, so there are, the wealth formula. So there are 16 categories that the wealth formula takes a look at. 11 of those are quantifiable for Kent County. 5 do not have any ranking, do not have any monetary value assigned to them for Kent County. But there are 11 where a quantified dollar amount is assigned to Kent County. 11. 3 of those categories, we rank 22nd worst. 3 other categories, we rank 23rd worst. And 4 of those categories, we are dead last. So there's only one category, which Ron brought up, there's only one category where we bounce up. So they have all of these categories, and column 6 is the one that says wealth per pupil. Now, there is no column on the wealth formula that talks about the student population. But we all know that it's about round numbers, 1,700 pupils in the whole public school system here in Kent County. When they divide 1,700 students into total wealth, we automatically jump up to third highest. We rank third in that one category only, ladies and gentlemen. All of the other categories, we are next to last, or dead nuts last. So in terms of, they're not taking a look at the waterfront. They say, well, you have a lot of waterfront property. Yeah, but that's not in the wealth formula. The wealth formula is taking a look at, and if you take a look at each individual category, they're looking at some pretty interesting things, you know? Granted, there are 5 of those categories that we are not quantifiably, that there's no monetary amount dedicated to Kent County. But of the 11, 10 of them, we're down at the bottom. GDP, which you brought up when these two guys were here, that's a whole different thing. That there's nothing in the wealth formula that aims at GDP, but we are dead nuts last in GDP in the state of Maryland when you rank all 24 entities, which includes the city of Baltimore.
But Mike, aren't they looking at tax assessments as part of that? And the waterfront properties tend to have high assessments, and that skews,
Yes.
that
The
skews
wealth
it.
formula deals with the property tax,
Right.
income tax, utility tax.
And not only, yeah,
The
for
denom-
railroads and yeah, and a lot of different categories.
Well, not the wealth formula itself. The wealth formula is those revenues coming in, a percentage of those revenues.
Right.
And the denominator is the number of students. So Mike hit the nail on the head. When that denominator is low at 1,700, that's when it appears as though the wealth per pupil in the state is high. If we had the same average percentage of population attending public school as is true for statewide, we would fall in the middle of the rankings for the wealth formula. If
Right.
we had the same percentage of population attending public schools as the statewide average here in Kent County, if our number was, let's say, 3,000 instead of 1,700, we would fall middle of the pack for the wealth formula. It's that denominator that nails us. That is what hurts us.
And the projections are for our student population the Kent County school system knows this. They have projected a constant decrease in student population. Every year, our student population declines. That's their projection because they've had to do that for Kirtland. And so they know that. So round numbers, we've got, it's in the high 1600s, but round numbers, it's 1,700 kids. And it's slowly declining. Yeah. So yeah, I know what you're saying, John, but that wealth formula and all of the columns in that spreadsheet dictate that we are not a wealthy county, by far. There's no argument, but they don't want to hear that. You know, all they look at is wealth per pupil. And when you jump from next to last, or down at the bottom, and then all of a sudden you're third highest, that's what they're pinpointing on, and nothing else. Nothing else. Sorry, John.
And
I
when
think
you,
you're both saying the same thing. I think you're both on the same team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're saying, right.
and when you take a look at the capital, like these new schools and stuff, the fact that there's at least 2 counties that don't have to contribute at all for the new schools, and we have to, 19,000 some people in Kent County have to come up with $40 million to pay back. I mean, that's not just a little difference, that's a whole lot of difference. And then there's a whole host of counties that have to pay 4%, 6%, maybe 8%, 2 with 0%. That just drives me, you'll never make me believe that it's that much difference.
According to the Census Bureau, these are numbers from the federal government. This is the Census Bureau. In the business section of the Census Bureau report, They talk about the number of businesses in Kent County, the total payroll in Kent County, the total number of jobs in Kent County. When you take the total number of jobs in Kent County and divide that into total payroll, the average hourly wage here in Kent County is just above $20. You can't argue with that number because it's a Census Bureau number. That's the federal government. So if you take a look at the Census Bureau report and just go to the business section and take a look at those numbers, $20 an hour, Howard County, Harford County, Montgomery County, Frederick County, they're all in the 30s, mid-30s. And here we are at 20. There's a definite argument, a debate, it is an argument, but debate that can be made that we are not a wealthy county. When you take a look at all of these particular categories and metrics, Governor Moore is a data-driven guy. Well, so am I. Somebody's got to show this data to show that these people that we are not a wealthy county.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm just going by memory here.
I got you. Then we have a couple closed session.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session under the Anti-State Code of Maryland, General Provisions, Article 3-305, little b, 1, to discuss the employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, and to consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation. And there are two matters to be discussed during the closed session. One will be the appointments and reappointments to boards and committees, and the other one will be personnel matters to consult with staff concerning the pending or potential litigation.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We are now